Good morning, everyone. Let me ask you something. Have you ever gone to bed feeling drained, resentful, or invisible because you said yes to something when your heart screamed no? If you have, you're not alone. Many of us fall into the trap of being too nice. But here's the truth. Being too nice isn't kindness. It's a betrayal of your authentic self. Kindness rooted in strength builds bridges. Too niceness rooted in fear builds walls around your potential. Today, let's explore how to live authentically and powerfully, not by being mean, but by being real. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever found yourself saying yes when every fiber of your being wanted to scream no? Have you smiled through something that made you uncomfortable or bent over backward for someone only to feel invisible or unappreciated afterward? If you've been there, you're not alone. This habit, this reflex of putting everyone else first, has a name: people-pleasing. And while it may look like kindness on the outside, deep down it's something very different. People-pleasing is a quiet, subtle form of self-abandonment. Let me explain. Every time you say yes to something you don't truly want to do, you're saying no to yourself. You're saying my needs, my feelings, my boundaries, none of that matters as much as keeping this person happy or avoiding conflict. Over time, this pattern chips away at your sense of self, leaving you drained, resentful, and unsure of who you really are. Why do we do this? Why do so many of us fall into the trap of pleasing others at our own expense? It's because we're wired to want acceptance. Somewhere along the way, we learned that being liked was the same as being loved, and we began to equate our worth with how happy we could make others. But here's the catch. People-pleasing doesn't create real love or respect. It creates dependency and often quiet resentments both in others and in ourselves. Think about this. Imagine a friend who always says yes to you. They never express disagreement, never set boundaries, and always put your needs ahead of theirs. At first, you might appreciate their generosity, but over time, something feels off, doesn't it? The friendship starts to feel unbalanced. You might even begin to wonder, what does this person really think? What do they really want? Their constant agreement starts to feel hollow because it lacks authenticity. Now flip the roles. When you people please, you're doing the same thing. You're giving so much of yourself that it starts to feel less like generosity and more like obligation. The relationships you're trying so hard to nurture begin to feel strained, not because you're unkind, but because you're not showing up as your true self. Here's another everyday example. Imagine you're at work and your boss asks you to take on a task you don't have time for. Instead of being honest about your workload, you say, "Sure, I can do that," even though you know it will mean working late, missing family time, or sacrificing sleep. You do it because you want to be seen as reliable, helpful, or a team player. But what happens next? You feel overwhelmed, frustrated, and maybe even bitter. And worse, the pattern repeats because now your boss thinks you're always available to take on more. Or consider your personal life. Have you ever agreed to go to a party or gathering you didn't want to attend just to avoid disappointing someone? You tell yourself it's not a big deal, but as the day approaches, you feel heavier and heavier, knowing you're about to spend hours in a place you don't want to be. And when you're there, you're not fully present, you're just going through the motions, counting down the minutes until you can leave. This is what people-pleasing does. It creates a life filled with obligations instead of choices, pretense instead of authenticity, and exhaustion instead of joy. But here's the good news. You don't have to live this way. You can stop the cycle. And it starts with one simple but profound realization: your worth is not tied to how much you do for others. You are worthy because you exist, period. You don't need to earn love or respect by sacrificing yourself. In fact, the people who truly love and respect you don't want you to abandon yourself for their sake. They want you to be real with them. When you stop people-pleasing, you give others the gift of your authenticity. You show them who you really are, and you invite them to do the same. You also teach them how to treat you with respect, kindness, and consideration. This doesn't mean you stop being generous or caring. It means you give from a place of abundance, not obligation. It means you say yes when you mean it and no when you need to. And when you do, you'll find that your relationships become richer, your energy returns, and your life feels more like yours. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with this. The next time you feel the pull to please someone at your own expense, pause. Ask yourself, what am I saying no to if I say yes to this? Remember, you are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to live a life that feels true to you. Be brave enough to honor your needs. Be kind enough to yourself to set boundaries. And above all, never forget that your value doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from being unapologetically, authentically you. Let me ask you a question. How often do you feel your emotions, your anger, your sadness, your joy, your frustrations pushed aside, silenced, or dismissed because you think someone else's feelings matter more? How often do you shrink your own voice, bottle up your truth, and let yourself take a back seat in the story of your own life? Too often, we treat our emotions as negotiable, as if there's something we can sacrifice for the sake of peace, approval, or avoiding discomfort. But let me tell you something fundamental. Your emotions are not just feelings, they are your truth. They are the compass of your soul, pointing you toward what matters most. You have your own emotions, and they are yours to honor. Don't let them lay down for others. Why do we let this happen? Why do we push our emotions aside so easily? It's because we're taught in subtle and not so subtle ways that making others happy is more important than honoring ourselves. We're told, don't rock the boat, be the bigger person, or it's not a big deal. But here's the thing, it is a big deal. Every time you silence your emotions, you silence a part of yourself. Let me give you an example. Think about a time when someone hurt you, maybe a friend, a partner, or even a colleague. You felt anger rise in your chest, the sting of their words or actions cutting deep. But instead of expressing how you felt, you swallowed it. You told yourself it's fine. I don't want to make a scene. Maybe you even apologized for being upset, as if your feelings were the problem. What happened next? That hurt didn't disappear. It lingered. It sat in the corner of your heart, growing heavier over time. You started to feel resentful, maybe even distant from that person. Not because of what they did, but because you abandoned your own emotions in the process. This is what happens when we lay our emotions down for others. We create a gap between who we are and how we show up in the world. And that gap between our truth and our actions hurts. It drains us. It disconnects us from ourselves. Now, let's flip the script. Imagine you honored your emotions in that same situation. Imagine saying what you said hurt me, or I felt dismissed, and that's not okay. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You might worry about their reaction. But let me tell you what happens when you honor your emotions. You reclaim your power. You show the world and yourself that your feelings matter, and in doing so, you invite others to do the same. This isn't just about conflict, it's about joy too. How often do we dim our happiness because we don't want to outshine someone else? Maybe you achieve something incredible, a promotion, a personal breakthrough, a dream fulfilled, but instead of celebrating, you downplay it. You say, oh, it's not a big deal because you don't want to make others feel small. But here's the truth, your joy doesn't diminish anyone else's. In fact, when you let yourself feel and express your joy fully, you inspire others to do the same. You give them permission to chase their own dreams and celebrate their own wins. Honoring your emotions isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's the foundation of self-respect. When you stand by your emotions, you send a powerful message to the world. I matter. My feelings matter. And that message ripples out into every relationship, every interaction, and every decision you make. This doesn't mean you disregard others' feelings. It means you hold space for your emotions and theirs without making yours smaller to accommodate theirs. It's a balance, a dance between empathy and self-respect. Let me share one more everyday example. Picture a parent who always puts their kids' needs first. They're tired, overwhelmed, and stretched thin, but they keep going because they think that's what love looks like. Over time, they lose themselves in the process. They forget what joy feels like. Now imagine that same parent pauses and says, you know what? I need a break. I need time to rest, to recharge, to feel like me again. That's not selfish, that's strength. Because when you take care of your emotions, you're better equipped to show up for the people you love. You can give from a place of abundance, not exhaustion. Ladies and gentlemen, your emotions are your truth. They are your guide. When you honor them, you honor yourself. And when you honor yourself, you teach the world how to treat you. So the next time you feel the pull to lay your emotions down for someone else, pause. Ask yourself, what am I giving up? What am I teaching myself about my worth? And remember this, you are not here to suppress your truth for the sake of others. You are here to live it boldly, fully, unapologetically. Protect your emotions, protect your power, and watch as your world transforms one honest moment at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever smiled and nodded when you wanted to disagree? Have you ever gone along with something you didn't want just to avoid an argument? Or maybe you kept quiet about your true feelings because you were afraid of how someone might react. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many of us do it. We call it being nice. But the truth is, it's often something else entirely. Being too nice is rarely about kindness. It's about fear, a fear of rejection, a fear of conflict, a fear of being seen as difficult or unlikable. It's the belief that if we keep everyone happy, if we avoid upsetting anyone, then we'll be safe. But safe from what? The harsh truth is this: being too nice is not safety, it's self-sacrifice. It's putting others' comfort ahead of your own truth. It's trading your voice, your boundaries, and sometimes your dignity for the illusion of harmony. And that illusion always comes at a cost. Think about a time when you avoided speaking up because you didn't want to cause a stir. Maybe it was at work when a colleague took credit for your idea. You felt the anger bubbling inside, but instead of addressing it, you swallowed it. You told yourself it's fine. I don't want to make it awkward, but was it really fine? No, it lingered, it got at you. And the worst part, the situation didn't change. That same colleague probably did it again and again because your silence gave them permission. Or think about your personal life. Imagine you're in a relationship, romantic, family, or friendship, and the other person keeps doing something that hurts you. Maybe they cancel plans last minute, make critical comments, or expect you to be available at all times. You want to say something, but a voice in your head says, if I speak up, they might get angry. What if they walk away? What if I lose them? So you stay quiet, you let it slide. And with every moment of silence, your resentment grows, and your connection with that person starts to erode. Why do we do this to ourselves? It's because we're wired to seek belonging. From the moment we're born, we crave connection. And somewhere along the way, many of us internalize the idea that being agreeable, being nice is the price of admission for love and acceptance. But here's the thing, true belonging doesn't come from being nice, it comes from being real. From showing up as your whole self, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. When you're too nice, you're not protecting relationships, you're undermining them. Because relationships built on fear of conflict, fear of rejection are not real connections. They're fragile, one-sided, and ultimately unsatisfying. Let's flip the narrative with a simple truth. Conflict is not the enemy. Rejection is not the end of the world. In fact, conflict, when handled with respect, can deepen understanding and strengthen bonds. And rejection, it's not a reflection of your worth, it's simply a sign that the fit wasn't right. Let me share an example of what it looks like to choose courage over fear. Picture this: a woman works in an office where her boss constantly piles extra tasks on her desk, assuming she'll handle them without complaint. For years, she stayed late, skipped lunches, and sacrificed weekends because she didn't want to seem ungrateful or difficult. But one day, she decides enough is enough. She sits down with her boss and says, I've noticed I'm being asked to take on additional work beyond my role, and it's affecting my ability to do my job well. I'd like to discuss a more balanced workload. Was that conversation easy? No. Did she worry about how her boss would react? Absolutely. But by speaking up, she reclaimed her time, her energy, and her sense of self-respect. And guess what? Her boss didn't fire her or label her as difficult. Instead, they adjusted her workload and respected her more for being honest. Courage is contagious. When you step out of the shadow of fear and into your truth, you inspire others to do the same. You create a ripple effect of authenticity that transforms not just your relationships, but your entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, being too nice is not the kindness you think it is. It's a cage made of fear. And the key to unlocking that cage is remembering this. You don't need to keep everyone happy to be worthy of love and respect. You don't need to avoid conflict to maintain connections. What you need is to honor your truth, speak with courage, and trust that the right people will respect you for it. So the next time you feel the pull to be too nice, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting out of kindness or am I acting out of fear? And if it's fear, let it go. Choose bravery instead. Choose you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a simple yet profound question. When was the last time you felt truly free? Not the freedom of having no obligations for a weekend or taking a vacation, but the kind of freedom where you felt at home in your own skin, unburdened by the need to impress, conform, or pretend. For many of us, that kind of freedom feels rare, like a fleeting moment we can barely hold on to. Why is that? Why do so many of us feel trapped, even when we're surrounded by choices and opportunities? The answer lies in one word: authenticity. Authenticity is the key to freedom. because it allows us to live as who we truly are, not as who we think the world wants us to be. But here's the catch: authenticity is not easy. It's not always comfortable. In a world that constantly pressures us to fit and stand out, or meet impossible standards, being authentic can feel like swimming against the current. And yet, it is the only way to truly live. Think about this: how much of your life is shaped by the fear of judgment? How many of your choices, what you wear, what you say, even what you dream about, are influenced by what others might think? Imagine carrying that invisible weight every day. It's exhausting, isn't it? Now, let me tell you a story, a simple, everyday example of how authenticity sets us free. Picture a young man in his first job. He's surrounded by colleagues who seem confident and polished, always saying the right things. He feels like he has to be perfect too, so he wears the right clothes, hides his insecurities, and never speaks up in meetings unless he's absolutely sure of his answer. Over time, he starts to feel disconnected not just from his colleagues, but from himself. One day, in a casual conversation, someone asks him about his hobbies. Instead of giving a safe answer, he hesitates, then admits he loves painting, even though it's not something he shares often. To his surprise, the reaction isn't judgment, it's curiosity. His colleagues start asking about his art, and for the first time he feels seen, not as the polished professional he's been pretending to be, but as the person he truly is. That small act of authenticity opens the door to deeper connections, not just with others, but with himself. You see, authenticity isn't about being perfect, it's about being real, it's about showing up, flaws and all, and saying, this is me. When you do that, you give others permission to do the same. You create space for genuine connection, because people can feel when you're being true to yourself. But here's the hard part: authenticity comes with risks. It means being vulnerable. It means accepting that not everyone will understand or accept you. And that's okay, because the people who matter, the ones who truly belong in your life, will embrace you for who you are, not for the mask you wear. Let me give you another example. Imagine a woman who's always been the peacemaker in her family. She avoids conflict at all costs, even if it means suppressing her own feelings. Over the years, she's become the person everyone relies on to keep things running smoothly, but inside she feels invisible. One day she decides to speak her truth. She tells her family how she feels, not with anger, but with honesty. Some of them are surprised, even uncomfortable, but something shifts. For the first time, she feels heard. And in that moment, she realizes that her freedom doesn't come from avoiding conflict, it comes from honoring her voice. Authenticity is not about being rebellious or rejecting societal norms for the sake of it. It's about aligning your outer life with your inner truth. When your actions reflect your values, your passions, and your essence, you no longer feel the need to prove yourself or seek validation. That's where freedom lies. Now let's talk about what holds us back. One of the biggest obstacles to authenticity is the fear of rejection. We worry that if we show our true selves, we'll be judged, excluded, or misunderstood. But let me tell you this: rejection is not the opposite of belonging. Pretending to be someone you're not is. When you try to fit into a mold that doesn't align with who you are, you might gain acceptance, but it will feel hollow because it's not you they're accepting. Living authentically requires courage. It means standing firm in your truth, even when it's easier to go along with the crowd. It means saying no when you mean it, even if it disappoints someone. It means celebrating your quirks, your passions, your unique way of seeing the world, even if it doesn't fit neatly into a box. Take a moment to think about what authenticity could look like in your own life. Maybe it's pursuing a career that aligns with your passions instead of what others expect. Maybe it's expressing your feelings openly instead of bottling them up. Maybe it's embracing your imperfections instead of hiding them. Ladies and gentlemen, the world doesn't need more people who blend in. It needs people who are brave enough to be themselves. When you choose authenticity, you not only free yourself, you inspire others to do the same. Ladies and gentlemen, as you step out of this room and back into the rhythm of your daily life, I want you to carry this thought with you. The world may try to tell you who to be, how to act, and what to feel, but only you hold the power to define yourself. Every time you choose to show up authentically, you're not just claiming your freedom, you're lighting the way for others to do the same. Yes, it will take courage. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable at times, but remember, the most beautiful things in life often come from stepping out of our comfort zones. The deepest connections, the greatest accomplishments, the purest joys all come when you are unafraid to be yourself. So go out there and dare to be real. Speak your truth, no matter how small it seems. Live with integrity, no matter how hard it feels. Celebrate your uniqueness, no matter who doesn't understand it. Because when you live authentically, you don't just free yourself, you help to create a world where others can feel free too. The journey to authenticity starts with a single choice, the choice to be brave enough to be you. So make that choice again and again every day and watch how your world transforms.